Chapter 4 Study Guide. For page 1, you are to write all of the correct responses for the slope of each line in the space provided. I can see that this first line here is going up and to the right, therefore it's a positive slope. The 2 points provided, I can create a right triangle and rise and run. I see here that this rises 1 and it runs 2. So it's definitely letter B, 1 over 2. I can eliminate 0 as the slope, because a 0 slope would be a horizontal line, or no slope is the same as 0 slope. Now, 6 over 12 would reduce to 1/2, and I want to see if there's any points that go along with that. I'm looking at another good point that could be right here and all the way up here. So if I make a right triangle between those, rise and run, does it rise 6 and run 12? That would rise 4 and it would run 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that runs 8, and 4 out of 8 also reduces to 1 over 12. So I am thinking that if the graph continued, 6 out of 12 would be the other slope because that does reduce to 1/2. For number 2, a horizontal line is a 0 slope. So I do know that B is a choice, which would also mean letter D would be a choice because that's a 0 slope. Now let's check A. Now this doesn't rise any, so rise 0, and from point to point that does run 1 block, and 0 divided by 1 does equal 0, so A would work, and it could not be C. If it's a 0 slope, it could not be undefined. For number 3, this line goes down and to the right, so I know that that is a negative slope. If I create the right triangle from point to point, rise and run, it rises 2, but it runs backwards 2, so that gives us a negative slope. So it cannot be A, because that's a positive answer. B is correct, because negative 2 over 2 is the same thing as what I came up with. Cannot be C, because that's a positive slope. And D would also be correct, because 2 divided by negative 2 would equal negative 1. Next, we're asked to find the slope of a line passing through each pair of points. So we can use our slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Also known as delta y over delta x, which just means subtract your y values and then subtract your x values. I'm going to label my ordered pair first. When looking at an ordered pair, the first value is the x value, the second value is the y. So I labeled it x and y, and I'll assign 1s to my first ordered pair, and then x and y, and I'll assign 2s there. Now just follow the formula and subtract. I can see I need to start with y2 in the first position, that's negative 3, minus y1, which is negative 12. In the denominator, I have x2, right here, 15, minus x1, which is 6. Now I just finish off the math. Negative 3 minus a negative 12. This may look familiar to you. Negative 3 minus a negative 12 is the same thing as negative 3 plus 12, which equals 9. Be careful with the integers. And you could double check that in your calculator. And then 15 take away 6 is also 9. So we could simplify, you could leave it like this, or you could simplify 9 divided by 9 is 1. Okay, same thing for number 5. We can use our formula. I'm going to do the same process where I label the ordered pairs and then I use the formula delta y over delta x, or subtract the y values and then subtract the x values. Remember, I label it x, y, and then I'm going to call these my 1s, and then x and y, and I'll call the second ordered pair my 2s. Now just follow the formula. y2, which is right here, minus y1, which is right here. Then x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is negative 5. And now just be careful with the negatives. I see a double negatives going on again. Negative 8 minus a negative 5. A double negative here is a plus. So negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. And then another double negative here. 0 minus negative 12 is just 12. And I could leave it like this. A better answer would be to simplify this, which would become negative 1/4. For number 6, use the given slope and the y-intercept of a line to write an equation in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. All you need to do is substitute in the m, which is slope, and the b, which is the y-intercept. So our equation would look like this. Instead of the m, I put in 2/3, but don't forget to put the x next to it. And instead of the letter b, I sub in the 4. That's it. Number 7, write an equation of a line that is parallel to y equals negative 2x plus 6. And the only thing you need to know here is parallel lines have the same slope. So y equals negative 2x, I have the same slope. And then it would be your choice to fill in whatever you want to put in for the y-intercept. So you could put in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, any of those values. You could also just leave it as 0. The key here, to be a parallel line, it must have the same slope. Okay, now we are given an equation and we are asked to graph it on the coordinate plane. So right above the equation, I'm going to keep in mind that idea of y equals mx plus b. So in this formula, or this equation, our m is positive 1/3, rise and run, and our b is a negative 3. When graphing equations, you begin at the b, which is the y-intercept. The y-intercept here is negative 3. So I'm going to begin at negative 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to begin right here on the y-axis because it's the y-intercept. Then I rise 1 and run 3 from that point that I just plotted there. So from there I'm going to go rise 1 and run 3. So I'll end up right here. And to make a good line, I'll need at least 3 points. So I have to do that one more time. Rise 1 and run 3, which would put me right here. So you need a minimum of 3 points. You could keep going, rise 1 and run another 3, if you want to. You could also reverse it and go down 1 and back 3. And now go ahead and connect them and make a nice straight line. Don't forget to put arrows on the end. Okay, same directions for number 9. So I can see this time my M is just negative in front of the X, so I can slide the value of 1 in there. -1 is my slope. And the B is +3. And remember, begin at the B. Begin at the y-axis and plot a point on +3. So I'm going to begin here. And now I need to rise and run. I'm going to rise -1 and run 1. So rising -1 actually means drop 1, but then run forward 1. So I'll be right there. Then we'll do it again. Drop 1, run 1. And that's all you need, is at least 3 points. I'm going to make a few more. So I can see my line will go down in the negative direction, and it begins at +3 on the y-axis. So yours will look a little neater than mine with pencil and paper, maybe a ruler too. Negative line, and the y-intercept is 3. Okay, for number 10, we're going to graph a line that has a slope of 3 and passes through the point -1 and 2. So my slope, or my M, is +3. Remember, I need rise over run, so I can put that over 1. And then we'll start by plotting the point -1 and 2. So start in the origin and go back 1, up 2, and plot that point. Okay, so I did that part. Then from that point, I'll rise 3 and run 1, making a positive slope. So from that point, rise 3, run 1, puts me right here. Then I can repeat that from the next point. Rise 3, run 1. And then that would be enough. I could go one more point if I want. And then go ahead and connect those and put arrows on the end.